The American muscle car era is one of the most iconic chapters in automotive history, defined by raw power, aggressive styling, and roaring V8 engines. Cars like the Pontiac GTO and Ford Mustang ruled the roads and captured the imagination of speed enthusiasts across the country. But not every muscle car lived up to the hype. Rising fuel prices, stricter emission standards, and design missteps led to the production of some disappointing models that left muscle car fans disillusioned. Today, we're taking a look at the top 10 worst muscle cars of all time. Cars that missed the mark in performance, design, or both. 1. Dodge Charger. Everyone's heard about the Dodge Charger, and this muscle car is known for its bold design, powerful engines that make it stand out. The muscle car was all about an aggressive and uniquely sculpted body. This muscle car has a lot of different models with features that caused disappointment among fans. Most of the early 1975 Dodge Charger models were loved for their aggressive styling, powerful V8s, and raw performance. This made the Charger become one of the most iconic American muscle cars. Unfortunately, during the 80s and early 2000s, Dodge introduced models that were completely different from the OG muscle cars. These versions had smaller, underpowered motors and front-wheel drive configs. So, Dodge Charger was no longer about high performance and rear-wheel drive setups that everyone already loved. The Charger models of the late 70s and front-wheel drive models of the 80s were called out for not having the power and muscle car appeal like the gold muscle cars. Fans were disappointed because these changes made the car completely different from the first Charger, so there was no more appeal among the muscle car lovers because they wanted speed and power. 2. Chevrolet Camaro. The Chevrolet Camaro is another iconic muscle car known for its strong engines and sporty handling. This muscle car used to have engines that ranged from turbocharged 4-cylinders to naturally aspirated and supercharged V8s. But as time changed, modern Chevy Camaros started to offer both performance and efficiency. The newer versions had higher trims, had over 650 horsepower, but in out history, there have been times when enthusiasts felt that the Camaro lost its edge. By the late 70s and 80s, the US made its emissions regulations more stricter so that newer Camaros had smaller, underpowered engines, which definitely affected performance. The 4th-gen Camaro also faced criticism for its mainstream design and cheap interior, so naturally, Camaro lost its competitive edge and became one of the worst muscle cars of all time. 3. Ford Mustang II King Cobra. The Ford Mustang II King Cobra was introduced in 1978 and was meant to be a special edition of the Mustang II. This muscle car had really flashy styling with bold graphics, and it had a Cobra snake decal on the hood. The muscle car had a 5.0 V8, but due to the emission regulations at the time, it only produced 140 horsepower, so it was not high performance. Mustang II as a whole, including the King Cobra, was not liked by fans because it lacked all the roots of the muscle car. This car had smaller, underpowered engines, and its shift to a more compact and affordable interior left all the fans disappointed. This car was built during the fuel crisis, so the manufacturers tried to get the car to be more efficient instead of having more speed. So all the fans who were expecting this Mustang to have raw power were sad over the fact that the King Cobra was so underwhelming. 4. Buick Gran Sport. The Buick Gran Sport was introduced in the mid-60s, and it was Buick's entry into the muscle car market. All the early models of the Gran Sport had powerful engines, such as the 401 cubic inch nailhead V8 and the massive 455 cubic inch V8 that produced up to 360 horsepower. All these features made the Buick Gran Sport a fierce competitor. The Gran Sport models were also known for their luxurious interiors as compared to other model cars at the time. So this muscle had everything from comfort to performance. By the mid-70s, the Buick Gran Sport, like all the other muscle cars, had been affected by the emissions regulations and the fuel crisis. So the newer versions had smaller, underpowered engines that couldn't get the performance of its earlier years. These later models, like the GS350, had reduced horsepower, and all enthusiasts who were looking to enjoy some raw power had to leave empty-handed. The focus of the manufacturer shifted more towards comfort and fuel economy, and there weren't any high-performance muscle cars around. 5. Mercury Capri Turbo. The Mercury Capri Turbo was introduced in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was part of Mercury's compact car lineup. So, this sporty muscle car had a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline-4 engine, which produced around 130 horsepower. This was more than enough for a compact car at the time, but really underwhelming if you were to compare it to muscle cars or other high-performance vehicles. The Capri Turbo had a lightweight body and sportier handling, but it didn't have the raw power and aggressive features that muscle car enthusiasts craved. So a lot of people were disappointed because the car didn't have the kind of performance expected from a turbocharged model. Although the Capri Turbo was fun to drive, it was meant to be an economy car with sportier styling instead of a true performance machine. All the fans were expecting a nice high-speed driving experience, but were left confused with this muscle car. 6. Pontiac Trans Am. The Pontiac Trans Am was introduced in 1969 as a high-performance version of the Firebird, and it became one of the most iconic American muscle cars. The Trans Am had an aerodynamic body and serious power under the hood, especially with its bigger V8 engines like the 400 cubic inch and 455 cubic inch options that gave impressive horsepower. The car was loved for its mix of style, performance, and handling. It had features like upgraded suspension, powerful engines, and mostly high speed. But by the mid-70s and into the 80s, the Trans Am also had to face challenges due to stricter emission regulations and the fuel crisis. So this muscle car had underpowered engines, like the 4.9 turbo V8, which struggled to produce any power and would only reach around 200 horsepower. None of the fans liked these later models because they didn't have the power and excitement of the original muscle car era. This era of muscle cars was all about fuel efficiency and styling gimmicks instead of maintaining the performance legacy that had built the Trans Am's reputation. 7. Oldsmobile Cutlass. The Oldsmobile Cutlass was introduced in the early 1960s and became one of the brand's most popular and versatile models. The car was known for its balance between performance, style, and comfort. Early Cutlass models, especially the 442 Performance version, were loved by enthusiasts for their powerful V8s, including the 400 and 455 cubic inch engines, which could produce over 350 horsepower. The 442 became the prime example of muscle car performance, offering strong acceleration and aggressive styling. During the 1970s, Oldsmobile began downsizing the engines, offering smaller underpowered V6 and low-output V8 options, which reduced the performance a lot, and everything that made the 442 and early Cutlass models iconic was gone. The design also shifted towards a more conservative, luxurious style, focusing on fuel efficiency and comfort rather than performance. The shift in this muscle car roots disappointed enthusiasts who'd been drawn to the Cutlass for power and the sporty edge. The late 70s and 80s models, with their smaller, less powerful engines and more compact design, confused all the fans. 8. Ford Gran Torino. The Ford Gran Torino was introduced in 1968, and it was designed as a larger, more upscale version of the Ford Torino, and it quickly became a symbol of muscle car performance. The Gran Torino offered a range of engines, including the powerful 429 and 460 cubic inch V8 options, which made it iconic and fierce on the road. Its bold, aggressive styling, along with strong engine performance in models like the Gran Torino Sport, made it popular among muscle car enthusiasts. The car was also made famous by its appearances in pop culture and the media. But as time passed, the Gran Torino, like many other American muscle cars, suffered from emissions regulations, rising insurance costs, and the fuel crisis. Ford started offering smaller underpowered engines, such as the 302 and 351 cubic inch V8s, which reduced performance. Enthusiasts were disappointed as these models lacked the horsepower and torque that earlier Gran Torinos had promised. The Gran Torino became heavier and focused more on luxury and comfort, so it wasn't really a fast muscle car anymore. The shift towards a larger, more bloated design, along with the lack of performance, was enough for the fans to run away. So, do you think that the fuel crisis led to a decline in the quality of muscle cars? Was your favorite muscle car also downgraded? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe.